Questions are power, but all power comes with a price. Use it to silence others, you are a manipulator. Use it to grant them clarity, you are a philosopher. Socrates, a man who never lost a single debate, not because he was always right, but because he never entered a debate to win. While others exhausted their minds defending their views, he simply asked. And each question, like a cold, swift strike, caused every argument to collapse under its own weight. He did not shout. He did not try to prove his intelligence. He relied solely on silence and reason, tools that few possess the patience to use. And today, I will give you 5 questions, known as the Socratic method. If you master this technique, you will not only win every debate, you will command every conversation, every situation, and every mind. But remember, this power is not for those who wish to show off. It is for those who seek mastery over others and over themselves. Before we dive into these 5 questions, let us understand why asking triumphs over arguing and why these 5 questions are so terrifyingly effective. When someone presents an argument, they expose themselves. They construct a tower of words, yet every floor can crumble if a single foundational brick is pulled away. The questioner builds no towers, they dig. They dig straight down to the foundation. And when the foundation collapses, the entire structure falls with it. A question is invisible, yet it carries the force of truth. You cannot lose by asking. A statement can be wrong. A question, if genuine, cannot be wrong. The psychological edge. Arguing makes people defensive. Questions make them think. Socrates understood this. He knew the ego always longs to be right, so instead of attacking, he invited his opponent to map out their own beliefs. And as they reached the end of that road, they discovered for themselves the ground they stood upon was nothing more than sand. That is not merely victory, that is liberation from illusion. Part 1. The first question. How do you know that is true? This is a simple question, yet as dangerous as the seed of collapse. Everyone holds beliefs, but few truly know why they believe. Beliefs are often inherited, copied, or absorbed unconsciously from the crowd. That's what I heard. Everyone knows that. It's just obvious. These answers are proof that they have never examined the origin of their own beliefs. Because 99% of people do not live by thought, they live by repetition. They believe what they hear most often, not what is most true. They believe that social media is ruining the world. Success requires a university degree. Happiness means having a lot of money. But when you ask them, where did you learn that? They have no answer. And when a person has no foundation for their belief, they begin to lose faith in themselves. They will realize that their convictions stem from emotion, not fact. Socrates believed that every unexamined assertion is dangerous. One afternoon in Athens, a confident young man stepped before Socrates. He said, "Your philosophy is meaningless. Reality is the only truth." Socrates asked just one question. "How do you know that is true?" The young man replied, "Because everyone says so." Socrates smiled. "Everyone or you?" No one remembers what he answered. All that is known is that afterward he walked away in silence. Because, for the first time in his life, he realized he had never truly thought. When someone says, "This job is impossible to do," you do not need to argue, simply ask, "Are you certain? Based on whose experience?" Or when someone judges you, "You're going to fail," ask, "What makes you so sure of that?" Maintain silence. Do not try to win. Silence is the sharpest blade because it forces the other person to listen to the echo of their own mind. An advanced variation. An advanced variation of this question is, what would have to be true for that to be false? This question flips the logic entirely. forcing them to confront their own blind spots. And sometimes it leaves those who thought they knew everything sitting in stone-cold silence. Part 2. The second question. What are you assuming? Every argument is an iceberg. What you see is merely the surface. The submerged depth, the invisible assumptions, is what keeps it afloat. For example, people should go to university because a university degree leads to a good job. It sounds reasonable, but what lies hidden beneath it? The assumption that everyone desires the exact same kind of good job. The assumption that the value of life is measured by money. The assumption that university guaranteed success in the first place. When you peel back these layers, the original argument turns brittle, and the speaker begins to truly think. This question strikes directly at the subconscious foundation. It does not destroy by attack, but by the cold light of awareness. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Human beings rarely live by reality. They live within unexamined assumptions. They say, "I need approval from others." Yet they never ask themselves, "What makes me believe that I need it?" A young soldier once asked Marcus Aurelius, "My lord, how can I avoid being insulted?" The emperor replied, "By understanding that words cannot insult anyone unless that person assumes they can." The question, "What are you assuming?" is a mirror reflecting the illusions human beings live with. Practical application. When someone says, "I'm not good enough," ask back, compared to whom? You have just shattered the wall of comparison, one of the single greatest sources of human suffering. When they say, "Everyone should go to university," ask, "Are you assuming that everyone wants the exact same kind of life?" That is a strike straight to the bedrock of belief, the precise place where the truth has been buried. Part 3. The third question. What evidence would change your mind? This is the boundary between a logical thinker and a defender of illusions. A person who truly seeks the truth will say, "If presented with better evidence, I am willing to change." A person clinging to blind belief will say, "Nothing could ever change my mind." And the moment they say that you need not go any further, because they have just confessed that they are no longer governed by reason. This is the question that most people fear above all else, because it forces them to admit one thing. If no evidence can ever change their mind, then they are no longer thinking, they are merely believing blindly. Try this in a conversation. Someone says, "Cryptocurrency is nothing but a scam." You ask, "Is there any evidence that would change your mind?" If they answer, "No, nothing could ever change my mind," you have won, because they have just admitted that reason no longer applies to them. This question separates the learner from the believer. A learner is willing to adapt when proven wrong. A believer only seeks to protect their ego. Epictetus once taught, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." This third question is the ultimate test of humility. If you cannot point to what would make you wrong, you have become a victim of your own convictions. Practical application. When someone tries to force their belief upon you, ask, "If presented with different facts, would you be willing to consider them?" If they say no, you know not to waste your breath. If they say yes, you have just unlocked the door to wisdom. Part 4. The fourth question. What would a dissenter say? This is the question that forces people to step outside of themselves. And for most, that is the single hardest thing in the world to do. The weak long to win. The wise long to understand. The truly wise long to understand even those who oppose them. This question is the ultimate test of perspective. If you cannot accurately describe the opposing view, you do not yet understand the issue. Someone says, "Capitalism is the ultimate system." You ask, "So, what would a dissenter say?" If they merely reply, "They're just jealous because they're poor," they have just admitted that they have never truly listened. People often grow up surrounded by debate, yet most of it is nothing more than shouting matches, not dialogues. This question teaches you what Marcus Aurelius once advised: understand the other person's argument better than they understand it themselves. That is the peak of wisdom. In a discussion at an old military academy, where men were deliberating discipline, a young officer declared, "The military is fair. Anyone who breaks the law is punished." An old instructor asked, "And what if that law was written by an unjust man?" The entire room fell silent. That is the raw power of the perspective shift. It unveils a door they never knew existed. Practical application. In a political debate, do not rush to refute. Ask, if you were born in a different country, would you hold the exact same view? In personal conflicts, ask, if you were in my shoes, how would you feel? A single question can shatter the ice of an entire dialogue, because it reaches into something far deeper than reason, human empathy. Part 5. The fifth question. What happens if everyone thinks like you? This is the final strike. It pulls the argument out of the realm of abstract ideas and casts it directly into reality. Someone says, "People should be free to do whatever they want, as long as they don't harm anyone." It sounds noble, but ask, if everyone actually lived that way, who defines what counts as harm? What about emotional injury? What about long-term damage? Suddenly, that beautiful argument shatters, because it cannot survive when pushed to its logical conclusion. Socrates called this reductio ad absurdum, driving a belief to its absolute limit to test whether it holds true. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "What is right is never right for us alone, it must be right for all." An idea possesses value only when it can be universalized. If a principle cannot be applied to the entire world, it is not truth. It is merely an excuse for self-interest. Practical application. When someone says, "Don't worry, I only lied a little bit," ask, if everyone lied just a little bit, whom could we ever trust? When they say, "I did it because everybody else does," ask, if everyone thinks like that, who will be the first to stop? This question is a mirror reflecting the consequences they never dared to face. Part 6. Advanced Tactics. 1. Strategic silence. After you ask, say nothing. Silence forces the other person to confront the question alone. Most will rush to fill the void, spilling unconscious admissions in the process. 2. The clarification loop. When their answer is vague, ask, "Could you clarify what you mean by that?" Repeat this until they realize for themselves that they do not truly understand their own position. 3. The example trap. Demand a concrete example. Can you give me a specific example of that? Most grand declarations crumble the moment they are forced to produce real-world proof. 4. The consistency check. A moment ago you said A, but now you say B. How do those two connect? No one can evade logic forever. Part 7. The art of defense, when it is used against you. If someone applies the Socratic method to you, do not react. Recognize that they are not attacking you, they are merely testing the truth within you. Calmly state, "That is a good question. What is your perspective on it?" Pull them out of the anonymity of asking questions and restore balance to the conversation. And always remember, not every conversation requires reason. There are situations where the Socratic method should never be applied. 1. When someone is grieving or angry, logic does not heal emotions. 2. With superiors or professors, they may feel challenged or disrespected. 3. When swift action is required, over-analysis kills momentum. 4. In intimate relationships, Relentless questioning makes others feel judged rather than heard. A Stoic philosopher knows not only how to speak the truth, but when to speak it. Part 8. Application in modern life. 1. In the workplace. Instead of telling employees, "Do it this way," ask, "In your view, what are the risks if we do the opposite?" You will gain far more than an answer. You will secure true buy-in. 2. In sales. Do not persuade. Lead the customer through questioning. If you remain with the status quo, where will you be in 6 months? A powerful question forces the customer to convince themselves. 3. In education and parenting. Instead of scolding, ask, "What do you think will happen if you do that again?" This is no longer control, it is enlightenment. 4. In love and relationships. In moments of disagreement, ask not to win, but to understand. What do you need me to hear most right now? Sometimes, a single right question can save an entire relationship. Part 9. The ethics and responsibility of wielding this power. Socrates was executed not because he spoke untruths, but because he asked too many right questions. And that is our lesson. Questions are power, but all power comes with a price. Use it to silence others, you are a manipulator. Use it to grant them clarity, you are a philosopher. Ask not to conquer, but to awaken. 3 virtues you must uphold. 1. Intellectual humility. You do not possess all the answers. 2. Genuine curiosity. Ask to understand, not to win. 3. Intellectual collaboration. Dialogue, not hostility. And 4 sins to avoid. 1. Intellectual arrogance. Believing you stand above others. 2. Questioning to humiliate. Turning conversation into a power play. 3. Endless nihilism. Destroying everything while building nothing. 4. The judge's disposition. Believing that truth belongs to you alone. One day, when you encounter someone stubborn and hot-tempered, remember that you do not need to shout to be right. You only need to ask softly to make them think. For true power does not lie in the ability to make others listen to you. It lies in the ability to make them listen to themselves. Socrates once asked the world a single question: "Are you sure you understand yourself?" And perhaps that is the only question that even today the world has yet to answer. These 5 Socratic questions are not merely weapons of debate. They are the intellectual training ground of a Stoic mind. Do not react, simply observe. Do not impose, simply lead. Do not fight, simply explore. Use them to question others. But above all, use them to question yourself. For the one who knows how to ask the right questions will no longer fear any answer.